40 years out, we're going to be the worst performing advanced economy in the world. So when you look at Canada at the moment, what are our problems?
There's no way Justin Trudeau could get away with spending all of the money he has in the last 2 years if he had to use real cash, because people would never accept the many thousands of dollars of tax increases that it would require. So he has basically turned our central bank into an ATM machine for his spending. They've created $400 billion of new money in 2 years, which has given us a 30-year high in inflation and boosted real estate prices by 50%.
And how does that compare to previous expenditures by governments?
Well, it's not even there. It's off the charts. If you look at the balance sheet of the Bank of Canada during the Harper era, even during the Great Global Recession, there was a minor bump in the assets it held, which is represented, which indicates the, how much money it was injecting. Whereas right now, it's shot off the charts. So the balance sheet of the central bank is up something like 350%. And all that cash has particularly ballooned asset prices. That's the unspoken story here. Everyone thinks about consumer inflation, which is horrible as it is. Then there's asset price inflation. And what that's doing is creating kind of an aristocratic economy where where the bigger the asset you have before the inflation, the richer you've become after it. And it is almost like the housing is attached to a balloon and it's being lifted higher and higher up, and anybody who's not already in the house will never be able to grab it and get inside. And so but it is all the result of this massive expansion of the money supply. So we're basically seeing a transfer of wealth from the have-nots to the have-yachts, as I like to say. Those in the managerial class, the CEOs whose stocks have been artificially inflated, and they've been able to give themselves pay share buybacks with exceptionally low interest rates. They can borrow money and then buy back shares, which increases share value and gives them a bonus. The folks who own mansions protected in neighborhoods that are protected by zoning laws against anyone else moving in. These people have done exceptionally well over the last 2 years. And yet the people who are doing the nation's work are now having their salaries destroyed by inflation. And then at the local level, you have municipalities bringing in our zoning laws that prevent new construction, so that you have they're invisible gates. They're gated communities, but they're invisible gates. And the invisible gate is government bureaucracy that prevents construction. So we have fewer houses per capita than any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. So what I'm proposing in both cases, stop printing money, start building houses. I'm going to tell the big city mayors that if they don't remove their bureaucratic zoning rules and let builders build, then I'm going to cut back on some of their infrastructure funds. Because I think it's going to need something that drastic to get these gatekeepers out of the way and actually build houses so that our youth have a place to call home. But it's across the economy. Ironically, all of these big government interventions seem to hurt the most disadvantaged. Our immigrants come here as doctors and engineers, but they can't work in those fields because of occupational licensing, protectionism, the gatekeepers. So I want to incentivize provinces to speed up recognition of foreign credentials so an immigrant doctor can actually work as a doctor, and remove the gatekeepers from our energy sector so we can build pipelines and dig for resources and become energy self-sufficient, and then remove the gatekeepers in speech. And all about those. The government is now pushing new censorship laws on the internet, I promise very clearly that I'm going to get rid of all of those laws and restore freedom of expression on the internet. So really what I see is the need to remove the governmental gatekeepers, to restore our freedom, let people take back control of their lives.
Canada's economy will be the worst performing advanced economy over 2020 to 2030, and then 3 decades after. Now, we haven't been doing very well as a country, not only under the Liberals. We weren't doing that great before under the Conservatives as well, especially compared to the US and many other countries that in some sense are our peers. And so That's a pretty damn gloomy forecast, right? 40 years out, we're going to be the worst performing advanced economy in the world. And so, what did the Conservatives do wrong? What has Canada done wrong? What have the Liberals done wrong, apart from, printing money like madmen and instituting these arbitrary rules?
We have the third biggest supply of oil on planet Earth, but we're importing 130,000 barrels of overseas oil every day. The solution to which is so obvious. It is that right next door to the St. John port, where we bring in the oil, we have St. John's, Newfoundland, is capable of adding another 400,000 barrels of Canadian production. We could just approve that production, then we could ban foreign oil, overseas oil from Canada altogether. And that would mean that the dollars wouldn't be leaving our country for overseas dictatorships, but would be staying here paying Canadian wages instead. And natural gas, we got 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. And you know what you do? You get natural gas onto a ship, you have to freeze it down to a liquid. Well, what do we have in Canada? Cold weather, as you know. And so it takes a hell of a lot less energy to liquefy natural gas in Canada.
Jesus, finally an advantage for cold weather.
Finally an advantage. And we have also geographic advantage. We're the closest point in North America to Asia is BC. The closest point in North America to Europe is Newfoundland. So we have a shorter shipping distance, less energy needed to liquefy gas, and yet we haven't succeeded in building a single major liquefaction facility in Canada, despite the fact that in 2015 there were about 18 proposed projects. So you could approve those projects, we could be bringing hundreds of billions of dollars of opportunity to our people, particularly our First Nations people. But it takes getting those regulatory gatekeepers out of the way to let it happen.